we even had to, like, dealing with time, like, is this something that has happened over 6 months,
right.
6 weeks, or
Right.
6 days? Like,
Yeah.
it changes the story every time, but those actual events don't change. They can take place
Right.
wherever they are, but to make sense of them by stringing them together, you have to.
Well, and it's easier to actually answer that question because we ran into the trouble, and I went through this myself a few times of like, what's the scale of our narrative and what are the stakes? And originally we had this big idea, and I think this is the problem of talking about your story too much rather than getting down to the details of your story, is we keep building it up and building it up, and I'll reveal here that our original end point was a massive car chase through the streets of Luzhou. And even though the stakes were actually, it turns out like, oh, it was just a misunderstanding, because that's all sitcoms are, just a misunderstanding. It still was like putting too much pressure on the stories that came before it to be epic. Whereas like the pilot story is Patrice and David want to throw a dinner party, but no one can come. And that's like, that's very everyday, as opposed to they fear they're going to get arrested and kicked out of the country. And it was hard to reconcile those two, that start point and that end point, until we realized the stakes of the end point are way too high. So we dialed it way back down. And then we were able to make all 6 episodes feel like they were part of one whole.
Right. And the storytelling, the pacing itself was something that we were much more satisfied, and we would watch ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd watch a car chase through Luzhou in a second if you told it was us, it was on right now.
Oh, yeah.
But the amount of work that it takes to go through that, the only place that makes it easier is in storytelling. Of like,
yeah.
The actual work to get it done is so much harder, but to actually watch it isn't nearly as fun or easy.
Yeah.
It's again, we talked about Kevin Smith in the last episode, but like the original Clerks was Dante was going to get shot and killed at the end, and someone said like, "What are you doing that for?" And he was like, "Well, I guess this is supposed to be, it's dark and gritty,
nihilism."
Yeah, 90s, we're Generation X. Don't do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and deciding what your stakes are and deciding, what they're doing. Are they running from the police? That gives the whole project a different flavor than what we actually came up with, which is they have to move apartments, which is like, that's not an everyday occurrence, but that's a normal thing to do.
And it's full of stress no matter where you live either.
Yeah, and relatable. But so to get back to like deciding the time frame of your series, I think that gets answered when you decide what are they doing. And if it is like, if one of them is growing an oak tree, then the time frame of your story is going to be much longer than if they're growing a basil plant, for example. Or if